Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, everybody. I'd like you to welcome everyone to our council meeting today, and thank you for coming out. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement from Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The lands we know today as the Township of Centre Wellington have been home to the Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We acknowledge that we're on the treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the Township of Centre Wellington, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee could not continue their traditional lifestyle and settled in their villages along the Credit River and in the Credit River Valley. These Indigenous nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Centre Wellington remains home to Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and to respect Mother Earth, and we are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to move down to item 3, addendums and corrections to the agenda. There are none. Number 4, disclosure of pecuniary interests under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, we'll move down to item number 5, presentations and announcements. And would like to invite Barb Lee to introduce today's artists. Hello, Barb.
Mayor, Council, it's just lovely to be here. I guess I better pull this down. Can you hear me now? Better. Okay. I am delighted to be here to present Millie Cumming on behalf of the Art and Public Places Committee of the Elora Fergus Arts Council. It's an amazing opportunity we have to attract our local artists and display their work, not just here in council chambers, but in other places around Centre Wellington. I'm thrilled to present Millie, but just before I do, I want to give a quick plug into something that we're working on and that will be up on display at the Sportsplex in Boardroom A starting tomorrow afternoon, and that is 24 pieces of high school student art. So today we're going there to finish setting up our rail system, and it'll all be hung, but I will be sending out an invitation because we hope to have an opening of their show. It's a tricky place because it's busy with reservations or it's locked up. So we hope to have that display available and accessible to people. Now, I just want to say that I am just delighted to invite Millie to come up and talk about her work. She has a remarkable history and a background, and she's going to talk about that and the incredible pieces here. And for those who may have seen it, Millie was also one of the artists that were part of the SAQA display of the Whisper project that was at the Sportsplex in the fall. If you missed it, there's a few things online about it. But for now, I'd like you to welcome Millie.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me? Thanks for the opportunity to share some of my quilts in the council chamber under the umbrella of the Elora Fergus Arts Council, Art and Public Places. I especially want to thank Anne Hobbs and Tim Merton, who helped Graham and I hang the quilts, and also to Barb Lee. I went down the quilting rabbit hole when I wanted to make quilts for our young son, who's now 33 years old. Right from the beginning, I have been exposed to amazing mentors and teachers in both quilting and the textile arts. And that artistic community certainly exists here in Centre Wellington as well. I was born and grew up in Ontario and have been cottaging in southern Muskoka since I was 5 years old, which is quite a long time ago. The 8 quilts you see here are all reflections of the place where I most feel peace and renewal. Long before I got into quilting, I was really into photography. And back in the mid-'80s, I heard Freeman Patterson talking about that he felt that for each of us, there is somewhere in this earth where our spirit rests. And certainly that resonated for me. Only it's Muskoka rather than Patterson's Namaqualand. And I hope you get some of the feeling of that. There are 3 main themes in my work. One, which is the one you see, are reflections of nature. and sometimes not just the cottage, but certainly the cottage is there. A second theme is an homage to the textiles and makers of previous generations, the linens and the embroideries and the discarded parts, and a very strong commitment to recycled and upcycled fabrics and embellishments. And that goes through much of my work, and more I try to use far less new stuff and use the things I find in thrift stores and so on. And the third set of quilts tends to be much more personal story. And on our Graham and I have a joint website, so a lot of the quilts are on there. I wanted to comment on why I live in Centre Wellington. After many years at Western, all of my professional working life was in British Columbia. First as a family doctor in northern BC, and then 19 years in palliative care at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, and primarily just as AIDS was coming in. And so it was an amazing 19 years. I only moved to Vancouver because of meeting my soon-to-be husband, Graham Chalmers. And so when he was getting ready to retire from UBC, we would come back every summer to the cottage and would pick out our top 5 places to live in Ontario. And those 5 were based on the beauty of the town, heritage aspects, the size of the town, and proximity to family and the cottage. But certainly heritage was very much at the top. Our top 2 places on that list of 5 were Fergus and Elora, and we didn't really mind which of those 2 it was. The choice would be with our decision on buying a house. And for us, that was an 1883 stone house on the banks of the Grand River in Fergus. And we have never, ever regretted that decision. So once again, thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to the Elora Fergus Arts Council and to the Centre Wellington Township Council.
Thank you, Millie, and we will enjoy your art for the next couple of weeks here. And I just love the colors and just sort of the reflections of the comments you were making in terms of nature. I particularly like this one on the to the right of the hall here, just because even just the angles and the sort of not a kind of maybe traditional. I don't know if that's traditional or not, but just sort of that breakup of those lines. I appreciate your efforts, and thanks for being a part of this program. So now we're going to move down to item 5.2, and we're going to invite Elizabeth Bender, Executive Director, Fergus Scottish Festival, and Matt, you will do so. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. We have a new system here now. Wow, we're button free. Excellent. Excellent. So again, sorry to disappoint. I am Matthew Bennett-Monty. I'm the president of the Scottish Festival. And Elizabeth Bender is with me in the background. We are here. We're pleased to appear once again before council. We were actually going through our notes. It's been exactly 1 year to the day since we were last here. So what we'd like to do is just provide an annual update and some feel goods of the festival for 2023. This year, the festival welcomed approximately 24,000 patrons to our community, with the majority of our numbers being local, provincial, and cross-Canada patrons. We still do have a dedicated following of guests from the United States and Europe. This year, our reach also included New Zealand and Singapore. 2023 saw the festival host the World Heavy Events Championships, and what an incredible competition it was. A little fellow from the U.S. standing at 6'8" and weighing in at 320 pounds. John the Mountain Van Buren showed Fergus and the world stage just how it was done. Our very own Jamie Trask from Elma was chosen to compete this year and proudly represented Canada at the championships. Once again, the Friday Night Tattoo did not disappoint, featuring an impressive showing of pipe bands, local talent, including the Fergus Brass Band, the Elora Festival Singers, and a nod to Fergus's 190th anniversary with a 19 caber salute. The Memorial Fire Caber took to the field again this year, and it seems to be taking hold as a festival trademark. As part of our ongoing Fergus 190th celebrations, we proudly adopted the Ferguson Tartan as our official festival tartan, with the support of Sir Adam Ferguson, who is our celebrated chieftain, and who shares a name with the founder of Fergus, then of course, Little Falls. You will now see this tartan draped across Centre Wellington and all of our promotional efforts. Our main stage was lined with back-to-back talent, welcoming fan favorites. And of course, I can't wait to finally put this joke to rest. We won't forget them now that they're gone. Glass Tiger. Our featured guests of Outlander fame stole the hearts of many festival goers. Despite the Screen Actors Guild strike restrictions, we managed to create an engaging, once-in-a-lifetime environment for all patrons. Always popular, our unique programming with our featured guests is quickly becoming a highlight for the festival and engaging a new audience from around the world. Our on-the-ground venues were a well-oiled machine. They were the end result being that we had happy guests and a very positive experience for all. We experimented with many creative marketing ventures this year, including a billboard on the QE1 corridor in Toronto with a call to make the trip to Fergus, Ontario, and an I Heart Fergus marquee photo op at the event that appeared all over our social media. We continued to attract attention online, overhauling our website to meet challenging patron needs and current trends. Socially, we continue to grow our followings with Facebook segment seeing a 170% increase in visits, and our Instagram segment seeing a 69% increase. Another record-setting year for on-site camping, easily surpassing last year's record of 20 minutes flat. This year, the most desirable campsites sold out in 6 minutes. Our campers continue to make our community their home from Thursday to Monday and spend a great deal of time enjoying what the area has to offer. It appears as though we've triumphantly regained our stride following some challenging years, working tirelessly, growing our attendance, followers, sponsorship, all while responding to ever-changing rules and regulations, tweaking our systems, and building our teams. In 2023, we literally showed the world our true tartan. A feat that would not be possible without such a dynamic, enthusiastic group of 350 plus volunteers. As we move into 2024, we are continuing to improve our service delivery, operations, and prioritizing a desire to work smarter, not harder. Our second good news story is our tourism impact. The festival is known worldwide, and our reputation speaks to the entire community of Centre Wellington. Many businesses, organizations, and community members boast that they are from the home of the festival. Although our event may only be 3 days in length, our reputation impact precedes us. A long-standing recipient of the Festival and Events Ontario Top 100 Events Awards year after year, the past 2 years, the festival proudly welcomed an average of over 25,000 people to our event and the community, the largest attended event of any event in the community. The Tourism Regional Impact Model, the TREAM, is a data analysis tool that helps tourism organizations learn more about their economic impact. Using TREAM, the total visitor spending resulting from the festival is 5.2 million regionally and 6.3 million locally. Our impact on GDP is 3 million regionally and 3.2 million provincially. Our patrons stay in hotels, B&Bs, they shop in our stores, they dine in our array of cafes, restaurants, and pubs. They walk our trails, they visit our historical sites. The festival itself spends nearly $500,000 in the local economy purchasing goods and services. Our festival mission is to deliver an event dedicated to the preservation of the visual, musical, athletic, and written heritage of Scotland and those Scottish people who made Upper Canada their home through a celebration of culture, history, competition, and education. In doing so, the festival prides itself in working closely with community organizations in the successful delivery of the festival, as well as being a leader in pursuing opportunities and projects that benefit other community events and the community at large. You've heard us speak of the Sportsplex infrastructure project, upgrading outdated electrical, water, communication systems, as well as the sharing of festival resources. This year, we added to the list with a permanent bottle fill station on the Sportsplex grounds. There's a real sense of satisfaction when we see other events and the community at large benefiting from these projects and collaboration. A great example was recently witnessing a local school cross-country running team filling their water bottles at the station. It can be something that simple. More recently, we have become a knowledge bank for events locally and across Ontario, sharing our planning and programming expertise. We fully embrace opportunities to partner and support events, including the Fergus Pipe Band's Robbie Burns Supper, the Fergus BIA Tartan Day. In 2023, we also sponsored the Strathcona Cup Curling Tournament and participated in Wellington County's first multicultural festival. We provide music and athletic scholarships to the students of Centre Wellington District High School and support the Fergus Legion Remembrance Day campaign. As mentioned, the festival is composed of 350 plus volunteers who work tirelessly to help programming engaging and relevant while promoting our mandate, promoting our local community, and ensuring guests and visitors feel safe and enjoy every moment they spend with us. With that focus on collaboration and giving back, we have renewed relationships with circus organizations, embracing the concept that many hands make light work. We have launched a new volunteer program with these organizations. It's proved quite successful in its first year, and we have already had encouraging interest from other local groups that are very eager to get involved. Always promoting local in addition to partnerships noted, we introduced a tasty venture this year, our new Whiskey Village. We featured 4 local distillers, and it was a savory success. In fact, we heard from a local restaurant in September that they had a table of guests from out of town who told them they had attended the festival and enjoyed it so much, enjoyed the Whiskey Village so much that they came back for a day trip to visit the distillers that spent time in that community. That's what it's all about. How does this relate to council? Well, as an event of municipal significance, the festival continues our quest to be a festival of choice regionally, nationally, and internationally, coupled with a desire to continue to contribute to our community. We are passionate as we strive for excellence and growth with an impact culturally, economically, socially, and environmentally. The news and updates that we have shared today align with your own council township priorities, including pride of place, reliable infrastructure, and economic prosperity. Each year as we head into planning, and especially now with a new climate in the post-pandemic world, we have no idea what to expect. Event delivery is fraught with ongoing challenges and increased expectations. But we are back stronger than ever, and we feel better being prepared to navigate the changes that lie ahead. We're grateful for our exceptional working relationship with the township, staff, and many community groups, partners, and individuals that make this event happen. The festival would like to express our sincere appreciation for the granting support received in the past years. Unfortunately, this year we were not as fortunate with the grant allocations. This, of course, was discouraging. However, we are preparing ourselves for the impact and modifying planning accordingly. We have requested funding to host the ever-popular Thursday evening parade and downtown events. Noting volunteerism has changed, and we are also hoping for resources to support our volunteers to minimize time and effort to set up, deliver, and take down the event. Again, work smarter, not harder. We were also especially interested in support to secure newly acquired and reconditioned festival assets currently stored outdoors at the Sportsplex and subject to ongoing vandalism and mischief, unfortunately. We would welcome and encourage the township's ongoing support of the festival and events like ours that strive to provide the best and safest event experience possible while contributing positively to the community, the economy, and keeping Centre Wellington on the map. We recognize that financial support for our endeavors were not on the cards this year. We do hope that future support can be garnered through the township operations or purchasing that would be of benefit to groups like ours. For example, recently our insurance company had advised us of a current example at an event where a volunteer was accused of assault by a patron. Footage from a security camera was able to prove that the accusation was indeed false. Additionally, the security camera footage and secured storage for the festival and township assets could perhaps mitigate losses due to vandalism and mischief. In a world of festivals and events, the balance of enjoyable, engaging events while managing risk is a delicate one. Any and all help is appreciated. We hope this presentation sheds some light on the overall impact of what this 3-day festival does for the community throughout the year. And we do enjoy being able to be here and share the good news. In closing, this summer, the festival is hosting our 79th annual event from August 9th to 11th. And we would like to formally invite council and the mayor as our special guests. Until then, we invite you all to join us for Kilt Skate on February 25th, 4:30 to 5:30 at the CW Community Sportsplex. Thanks so much for your time. Questions? Elizabeth will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Matt. Questions, comments from council. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you so much for coming and speaking about it. I recently attended the Robbie Burns dinner. It was fabulous. I'm not a haggis lover, but I did have some. It was prepared very well. So I'm really looking forward to this year. And thank you for coming and highlighting everything that you did last year. It's really important for the community to know this too.
Any other comments, questions from council? Yes, Councillor Evoy.
Through you, sir. Thank you, Matthew and Elizabeth. So financially, how are you, just for clarification, are you okay moving forward this year, and what are you doing to make up for that?
So are we okay? Yes, we're okay. We're doing the best we have with what we've got. And we are fortunate. We've been able to help out so many service groups, and in turn, they've been able to help us out. We do still rely on granting, and I think that's just the way it is now. We certainly try to be as financially responsible as we can. Unfortunately, when you get to these size of events and these outdoor events, especially, everything kind of hinges on what happens this year, what happens now. We pray for sunshine and warm weather, and we pray for great attendance, promotion. We're out there. We're hustling. We're trying to continue to make our event as appealing to everyone, so that they will put us on our list to come and visit us in the summer.
Any other comments, questions? I've got a few things I'd like to say. The numbers are impressive. 24,000 people, 350 volunteers, and as someone who's involved in kind of another thing like that, I understand the how it's difficult to do these types of events consistently on a regular basis every year, and you got weather and all those types of things to deal with, and it just speaks volumes to you and your staff, Elizabeth, and all your volunteers consistently coming out every year and supporting this important event. It's just it obviously it's a celebration of our Scottish culture, but it's also a celebration of life in this community, and it's just not just tailored to being Scottish. It's about celebrating our community and all the good values that way. So I, with utmost respect, thank you for all your efforts that way, and your staff and all the people that are involved, because I know how difficult it is to put these types of events on year after year, and even and how challenging given sort of our recent history with COVID and all those lovely things like weather to come into play. But again, appreciate all your efforts. Thank you for coming out and sharing this. We will continue to, as best we can, from a community, support your event, and we look forward to continuing on with this great relationship with the festival.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to slide down to item 5.3, Dr. Sarah Gower and Allison Armstrong from the Wellington Healthcare Alliance, Physician Retention and Recruitment. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Waters. Okay, oh, this is different. Can you hear me if I just stand like that? Okay, perfect. I tend to, if I'm leaning in, I'll try to keep my posture good. All right. Thank you all very much once again for having us here today. And if she's still here, Millie, that was super cool to hear from you. And of course, I Googled her immediately, and she is actually retired. So she used to work in Hazelton, BC, which is where a good friend of mine, Peter Newberry, works as well. And I've now immediately Googled his daughter to see whether she knows you. So small towns, small world, small family doctor worlds. And yeah, Millie did a lot of obstetrics and then a lot of palliative care, which feels pretty familiar to my story. And I'm also a quilter, so I'm feeling quite, there's a lot going on here. It's very special. So here we are, just a quick update on physician recruitment and how things are going locally. We certainly have had quite a year there. You know, as you all know, I think there continues to be a physician shortage across the province, which is currently especially affecting family physicians. I would say over the averages in the last 2 or 3 years have seen about 20% less of medical students choosing to specialize in family medicine. So those numbers are starting to go down. And of the ones who do graduate, we're seeing that they are going into more focused practices. So they're maybe graduating and doing things like only working in emergency rooms, only doing anesthesia, only working in walk-in clinics or filling in for other doctors, not coming and taking on a full practice, and sort of, committing to a community and staying for a long time is a little bit at a low right now. I think it may bounce back in the next 5 years or so, but it's going to be a tricky few years while that happens. So locally, we are actually had quite a good year in terms of our specialty recruitment. So we were able to recruit 2 general surgeons. We had 2 retire, and then we, by the summer, we'll be back up to 2 general surgeons, which has been great. And we've been able to have a lot of locum coverage during that time of transition, with locums coming in for a week or so and covering emergency surgeries and doing clinic work and really sort of keeping things together, which has been great. We've also recruited an additional 2 obstetrician gynecologists. So by the summer, again, we'll have 4 in our community in place, which is quite good. We do have a new family physician, Dr. Brock Jeffs, just up in Elora, who's come, and a new GP anesthetist. So that's someone who does anesthesia and works at our hospital as well as Palmerston and Mount Forest, who do some anesthesia times. So she's working, is working now, and will continue to out of all 3 places. Then we've had some more hospitalists come. So those are also family doctors who come and solely look after hospital patients. So they help us locally who have practices plus look after our own patients. Well, they will help us look after our patients and also look after patients who don't have a family doctor who are admitted to hospital. So that's been a huge help. And then we've had a number of emergency physicians come in who, again, are family doctors who don't have local practices but are coming in to help cover emergency room shifts. And to be honest, in several months have stopped us from having to close our emergency room for periods of time, which, as you know, both Mount Forest and Palmerston have struggled with, as well as various other communities that are kind of once removed from us, like Listowel and Kincardine and so on. So that's been super helpful. And we're very, very proud that we've been able to continue to offer offer full services. Groves is a busy place. I'm sure if some of you have spent time there, the waits are getting a bit longer, and there's more people who are admitted to the hospital who stay in the emergency room a bit longer before they're secured a room upstairs. Our OB program occasionally has to go on diversion, where we'll move women around to different local hospitals, but other hospitals go on diversion and move women to us too at different times. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think we're all holding it together quite well and doing a great job of providing consistent, safe care. We continue to have lots of medical learners coming through. So those can be anywhere from like a first-year med student showing up, or even a co-op student actually from high school, right up to someone who's almost finished their training and is just in their final months. And we've got lots and lots of them coming through. We really appreciate it whenever you're seen by a learner, either in one of our offices or at the hospital, and you I don't want to say put up with them. That sounds rude, but you know what I mean. They're super keen and they love being here, and they always comment on how much they love our local patients and really enjoy being in a small community that feels very supportive. As part of the funding you've provided, we're able to provide a welcome package to each trainee when they do come. That's just sort of got some local items in it, a coupon, a little bag of toiletries for if they're staying overnight or staying late at the hospital, etc. And that's been really gives people a positive experience here. And lots of our learners come back. So they maybe come as a student and then they come back as a resident. And probably still right now about 75%, I would say, of our family doctors here came through originally as a learner and have now come back to settle here and raise their families here. So that continues to be a really, really great. We also survey those students all the time to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can. We've continued to attend career fairs. These have changed structure a bit over COVID, but they're coming back again. And last year we went to Western, McMaster, KW Ottawa, and ROMP in Collingwood, which is a rural Ontario medical program. It's called, so it's specific to rural learners. And so that's been really useful and often gets us some bites. And we've also joined something called SOPRA, which is a Southern Ontario Physician Recruitment Alliance. That's a newer thing that's sprung up as all of our communities in Southern Ontario struggle and, vaguely compete with each other, but also try to work together, and really just problem solve as communities and see what we can do. And that actually is partly going to include starting or continuing to recruit international graduates who some of them are truly are born and raised in other countries and have done equivalent training and would like to come to Canada. Some are Canadians who have trained overseas for different reasons and are looking to come back. And traditionally, they've tended to come back into bigger centers. But this part of this group is working on attracting them to come back to smaller communities. We've had a local doctor, Dr. Muldoon, that some of you might have met, who's come. She had come from, grown up in Cambridge, but went to the States for her training and has now come back to this area and has just been a phenomenal addition to the community. So somebody like her, we previously would have had more trouble finding, but we're starting to attract people like her who are working existing elsewhere in the world, but are interested in coming back to our communities. And then we also have paid advertising that we keep track of, and a lot of that is online now, and then through social media, actually, as well as through word of mouth. And then the final piece that you have been extremely helpful with is accommodation. I know we talked about that we've talked about it for a few years, but I think last year it really all came together, and you've provided us with the Garth Shore Farmhouse now. So it's been extremely popular. It can host up to 4 people at once. So we use that for people who are coming as locums, sometimes as learners. It's sort of got a variable. We have some criteria around it. And so far we've had over 32 physicians using that farmhouse, and many of them come back repeatedly. So we have a kind of a crew now of younger, really keen physicians who come up and do hospitalist or emerge. Their home base is Toronto or Hamilton or Mississauga, but they really want to keep their foot in rural. Maybe their partner, their extended family, their children keep them tied to the bigger city, but they're happy to come up and spend a week with us once a month or once every 2 months. It's an enormous help to us, and they're able to stay at the farmhouse because, as you know, local housing, even for locals, is very expensive and hard to come by on a very short term just for a week. And so it's been an enormous advantage to have that farmhouse. And we can't thank you enough for it. It's actually made a huge difference. I can't believe how we survived without it. And I think that's all that I had prepared to say, but I'm happy to take any and all questions. I didn't introduce myself. I feel like I know all of you, but maybe the crowd. I'm a family doctor. I work here in Elora. I work here at all of us that live and practice here locally also work out of the hospital. I mostly do obstetrics and palliative care, and then I follow my own inpatients at the hospital too, and kind of do whatever else comes up in the day. So it's all, yeah, I've been here for just over 15 years now. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Any comments, questions from, yes, Councillor McDonald.
To you, Mayor Waters. Thank you, Dr. Gower, for coming and giving us an update. I feel good about the decision on the Garshore House, so that's great that you've utilized it for that many physicians. Just a question, Medical School of the North, you know, it does capture a lot of students that necessarily want to stay in the North after they graduate. Is that something we have looked at in the committee? Do you know?
Yeah, so we stay in contact with all of the medical schools, including NOSM, which is the Northern Ontario Medical School, and their students come to us for electives. Those are organized through that ROMP organization that I mentioned, or directly from NOSM as well. There's actually one in Mount Forest right now this month, who is actually Peter Newberry's grandson is currently in Mount Forest doing an elective. So it's all full circle. Yeah, it's kind of funny. My friends' kids are now in med school. That's pretty scary. So yes, we do. And we do talk to them. And it's interesting. Their data, they recruit from the North a lot, and they're very successful with that. But a lot of their students do not actually stay north, but many of them stay rural. So I agree. It's a good source for a community like ours. And we definitely keep a close eye on their graduates and get as many of them here as we can. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from council? Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We're so happy to hear how successful the Garshore House is. We know that was going to be a good program, and it's really uplifting to hear that it's been well accepted that way, and helping make your job easier, and obviously providing us resources, medical resources for our community. Anyways, again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we're going to move down to delegations right now. We're going to invite just have a little movement here, so I'll just let people move along here. Thank you for coming by. We'll see you again. Okay, at this point, I'd like to invite Pierre Chauvin from MHBC regarding RZ 1322-223 St. Andrew Street to provide us a presentation. Welcome, Pierre.
Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning. With me this afternoon is Dave Gillies, who's the developer of this application. This is item 8.6 in your agenda. And also with me is the architect, Nicola Augustine from Fried Turner. I've just put together a little brief presentation, and it's more visual than anything, just because we have made some design changes as a result of the comments we heard, not only from the public, but from yourselves, Heritage Committee, and have made some adjustments to the design, which we believe is personally also, I believe it's quite an improvement from where we were. And certainly what is now reflected in the bylaw that's before you in the staff report. We fully support the recommendation in the staff report. I just want to take a moment to thank your planning staff, in particular Mariana, for getting us to this point. It's been a long journey for us. There's still many more steps to go through the site plan approval process, but certainly this is a big step forward for this development in the community. Just to advance this, we have made some changes, as I said. This is just summarizing some of the, and as a result of some of the outside design changes, there were some changes internally. Total number of units is still 17 residential units. There is a unit on the ground floor, but it is only occupying a portion of the ground floor, and it's acting more as a transition between this development and the current residential uses. All those are their own commercial. Current residential uses on St. Andrew Street to the east. And in order to ensure that there is commercial on the ground floor, the bylaw does specify that the minimum amount of or a maximum amount of residential or non-commercial uses are permitted in the bylaw. We certainly see this as a continuation of the the downtown of Fergus and your CBD. As such, it's designated as such in your official plan. So we want to keep that commercial component in this development. So as a result, you can see there, the range of units, the sizes, they vary. Some pretty large sizes by today's standards, from 653 square meters to 1,300 square meters. 1 3-bedroom, 9 2-bedrooms, 5 1+ den units, and 2 1-bedroom units. So quite a mix and variety of types and sizes of rental products that will be made available to the community. Lot of talk about the parking that's available, although we do have the 50% reduction that's provided for in the zoning bylaw for C1 zones. Our client does own additional parking spaces just up the road on Gower Street that will be made available to provide for the tenant parking for the site, and ultimately will provide enough parking for the tenants. In addition to that, there will be basement lockers and indoor storage for bicycles, etc. As part of the main design, I'll get to this in a few slides, is not only did we shift the building further west away from the residential dwelling, the bungalow to the east of us, and provide a bit more setback from there, but we also introduced step backs in the upper story to reduce the impression of the mass of the building and sort of provide a bit of a variety in the sort of skyline, emerging skyline in Fergus, Center Wellington. So I'll just go through the next slides and just illustrate where we've been. So this is just where the previous plan that was before us at the public meeting and was presented at before council in the past. And as a result of the comments, this is where we are today. So quite a stark contrast from where we were to now. You can see the balconies have been internalized to the development, so it minimizes that overlook, particularly on the eastern side of the property. Again, I mentioned the commercial at grade. That residential unit, it would be on sort of the easterly side of the building on the ground floor to again act as that transition. And you'll see that top floor, the 5th story, is stepped back from the top of the building. So again, it helps reduce the impression of the building mass and the height of the building itself. And I'll speak to some of the materials and design elements that were incorporated to pick up on the cues in the surrounding Heritage District. These are just different perspectives along looking westerly along St. Andrew Street. I'll remind you there is a nice healthy, I'll call it hedgerow, tree line between us and our neighbors, which will remain. And again, looking easterly along St. Andrew Street, Gower Street is in the foreground. You can see sort of that sort of activated street frontage, and one of the aspect, if you'll see in the previous design, we had more of a portico and hiding that commercial element. Now with this redesign, it brings it right to the street front and really an activated sidewalk landscape along the street frontage, which is very important and consistent with what you see already in the downtown. This is what you would see in the rear looking from Gower Street. The parking is oriented to the rear of the building, away from the more predominant collector road of St. Andrew Street. So again, emphasizing sort of the design of the building and not necessarily the vehicles. But again, sorry, go back to this again. The balconies are internalized to the building, so they're not at the corners where they were before, and so minimizing sort of that overlook from our onto neighboring properties. So in terms of some of the design elements that Nicola has incorporated in this redesign is, and picking up on some of the cues that you see in the neighborhood, in the downtown neighborhood, is again, primarily the colors and the materials will be important. And again, this will all be further refined and discussed with staff through the site plan approval process. But you know, the colors and the materials will be important to reflect sort of the similar materials that you find in your downtown. Large floor, ground floor windows, sort of floor to ceiling, again, reflective to, you can see on your left-hand side, existing development on St. Andrew Street in the downtown. We've got this sort of rhythm of windows, of 3 windows, again, that these punched windows that we've recreated, again, reflective in this particular design. And you'll notice, and this is on the right-hand side, this is the vault. Everybody knows this building at the corner of St. Andrew and St. David, where there's detailing in the corner materials, and that the rendering in the middle doesn't quite pick that up, but that is the intention, to have similar sort of detailing in the corners and those types of things. And also to minimize that height, not only are we proposing to step that building back, but incorporate sort of lighter tone or muted tone materials to, again, reduce that impression of that 5th story. You'll notice, similar to the other downtown buildings, we've got sort of this banding on that ground floor, and then it's repeated at that 4th floor. You'll see that similar banding in some of the existing buildings in the downtown. So again, very reflective of what you see in your Heritage District already, and I should be careful calling it Heritage District, Heritage Area. And but so that's the intention, is to sort of bring forward some of those design elements. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we believe this has been a great balance of sort of balancing the heritage interests of your community while bringing forward much needed residential rental housing to our community at the same time, and putting it in a place where it is needed and certainly accessible to many residents, and ultimately avoiding the need to expand and grow out onto our agricultural lands. So this is, in my view, a great balance and fill project, and we ask that you kindly support and the staff recommendation. And I think I will terminate my presentation now, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Pierre, for that presentation. Comments, questions from council? No comments, questions? Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, I'll break the ice. This is really difficult because Wellington County states our urban plan. And after just attending Rural Ontario Municipality Association's conference in Toronto, it's very clear if we don't intensify, we're spreading out on prime agriculture land. So this is very difficult decision for me to make. Pierre, I really appreciate the design of the building. It is much better. I did go to the street and stood at the bottom and looked at the height up the street. How you've tried to match it to the downtown, I really appreciate that too. I look further to my fellow councillors for any comments as well.
Take credit for the design. I have to give that to Nicola at Fryer Turner. So she's done an amazing job at that.
Any other comments, questions from council? I'd like to make a few comments. I do appreciate the group going back and reworking the drawings. I know That sometimes can be a very hard process. You invest a lot of time and design, and so sometimes that's a difficult thing. But I think it speaks, in my mind, volumes to your group to go back and rework sort of those inputs that way. Obviously, it's always a challenging time when we're used to seeing things in our community at certain heights, and we have a comfort level sometimes with these things. But I think you've really, in my mind, you've balanced all those concerns in terms of the heights, the sort of setback on that fifth story that looks very. It's in keeping, and you just don't see that presence that way. If you look at sort of the building structure itself, dividing the building in three makes it the massing smaller as well. Bringing that. The commercial forward, I think, is again in keeping with a lot of the buildings that are in downtown Fergus as well, and just the sort of more muted colors on there, I think, are in keeping with sort of again the heritage component. I know. It's not just in our community, it's going to be a struggle in every community to sort of balance the historic conditions of our downtown with the need to grow and really where to put that growth. And so there's never going to be a perfect answer that way, but it's always a matter in my mind of taking all these things and trying to weigh those things and work towards a good solution that way. Preservation of agricultural land, especially prime ag, in my mind, should be paramount. And yet we need to grow, and we need to grow within, hopefully soon to define our urban boundary. But the opportunity to grow within our downtown to provide these levels, we're talking 17 units of rental units in our community, which are badly needed. And in the variety of the type, we've got 1 3-bedroom, 9 2-bedroom, 5 1-bedroom. These, I think there are really, in my mind, they're assets for the community, and it'll provide variety of choices for a community in a difficult market. We had Dr. Gower speak earlier on terms of how difficult, and thanked us for the ability to have a Garth Shore apartment or Garth Shore building there. Again, that speaks to the rental needs within our community. So this is always going to be a challenge. You're going to also hear in the community, well, it's this way or it's that way. I think at the end of the day, sometimes we have to be a little bit brave. And we got to balance all these things, and we want to do it based on good decisions. And I think through this process, I think we've had good discussion, expressing some of the concerns and issues within our community with the development community, and they've come back and they've worked hard to provide something which I think could very easily fit in our community. So again, I'd like to thank you for your time and your presentation, and then we'll circle back in a little bit on this. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to move down to consent items. Consent items, we'll do this a few times until we're all used to this. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and are voted on collectively. However, any member of council may request one or more items be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and or action. So we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approves consent agenda item 7.1. Okay, do we have a mover for that? Oh, do you have a question? No, you're a mover? Okay, thank you, Councillor Craddock. Seconder on that, Councillor Adams. Any comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I do have one question. I noticed in some of these advisory committees, this DEY and I think a couple of others, there's reference to some working groups that I'm not sure I'm completely familiar with what is involved in them. And I don't know if you could direct me to a spot where I can find some information or when it could be provided in the future. So I can give you an example. For example, the nomination to public engagement working group, like I just don't know what that is, and I don't know if there is somewhere where I can find more information on those. And I believe there was a working group in a previous minute that I wasn't familiar with.
Thank you. And through Mayor Waters, each advisory committee has the ability to establish working groups, which are typically a handful of committee members getting together to get into the details on particular topics. In a lot of the advisory committees, those have not been established yet. I think we're still in the process of establishing them and can provide more information when the time comes.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a mover, seconder. All those in favor? So moved. Okay, now we're going to move down consideration of reports. Item 8.1, changes to the open air burning bylaw, and we will welcome Tom Mulvey. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much, Mayor Waters, and through you, Mayor Waters, the permit or the report before you is basically some housekeeping unit things for our already in place burn permit program. First part being limiting the location of fires and not allowing them in front yards. This is done basically for a few reasons, but mostly for safety. These fires are accessible to people walking by, children walking by and playing, pets walking by on leash and off leash, and they can be distracting to people driving by as well. That takes their attention away from the road to see what's burning or why it's burning. So that's the reason for that. Also, people get confused about the municipal boundaries and where the municipalities ownership starts and stops as far as the front of the houses and that. The second part of the program or the report deals with adding a classification of fire, calling a Class D fire. This would be a one-time fire for different things like events, festivals, that sort of thing, where these fires can be had on municipal properties and that sort of thing, with a small administration fee. Because they're only one-day fires, they wouldn't be at the same price as a year-long permit. And it hopefully releases the township of any liability to people having fires and that sort of thing. So that's basically the gist of the report. Unless anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, comments for, yes, go ahead, Councillor Evoy.
I do through you, sir, but sadly my connectivity isn't great. We had received a question about open air burning in the backyards from some of our Elora neighbors, and sadly I can't bring it up right now, but I know there was, and anyone can correct me that received the email, I believe it went to many of us. There was some question around whether or not this was, if there were going to be any restrictions on this with regards to their own neighbors and people struggling with their own breathing issues. To have some of this heavy burning happening in the backyard was of grave concern to some of our neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. The permit program already allows people, when they sign up for the program, most of the permits are purchased online. They're provided a list of rules and things that they can burn and what they mostly can't burn. And it is very limited and not allowed to burn garbage, petroleum products, brush or green foliage or anything like that. I believe the permit says that it has to be twigs, logs, or clean firewood unpainted. So they already sign off and say that they won't do that. Also, the permit in the questions and answers, they said frequently asked questions of what if the smoke is bothering your neighbor? We would expect that neighbor to have a conversation with the person and say, you know what, if you're gonna have a fire, let me know so I can get my windows shut, or make sure that that fire is burning hot enough that it's not creating a lot of smoke, and hopefully they could have a good conversation and that sort of thing. And if they're burning outside the regulations, then we have a number of people in the fire department that are provincial offences officers and can issue Part 1 tickets with some provincially provided short form warning. And those fines are set to mostly around $150.
Thank you, sir. And for follow-up through you, sir, yeah, the issue is around because there's commercial and residential in the same place. Specifically, this person speaking about Elora, but they're talking about the bush and the garden stuff that people are burning, and how that's, even though they might be allowed in one space, the smoke is going in the other. So I guess the best move for our people who are concerned would be direct communication with their neighbors and possibly with y'all as well.
Absolutely. We encourage the neighbors to go talk to each other and figure these things out on their own. If that conclusion can't come to that, then we're certainly available to go and provide our comments and see what our officers would think of whether or not this is being a nuisance fire or isn't being a nuisance fire, and we'll try to make the best decisions.
Any other comments, questions from council? Well, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Fire Chief Mulvey. Yeah, you probably, I'm sure you wouldn't want that job anyways. Anyways, thank you. Okay. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approve the proposed changes to bylaw 219-35, a bylaw to regulate the setting of an open air fires in the Township of Centre Wellington, and that the staff be directed to prepare an amendment to reflect the approved changes. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor Craddock, any more comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Okay, we're going to move down to item 8.2, RFP number 5923, fire pumper truck. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. And through you, this report provides recommendation and seeks council approval for award of request for proposal, which is 59-23 as opposed to 30-23 as presented in the recommendation. So apologies for the typo on that one. In regard to the acquisition of a fire pumper truck, recommendation is that council award request for proposal 59-23 regarding the purchase of a fire pumper truck to Dependable Emergency Vehicles to an upset limit of $1,093,377, excluding HST. The proposal was issued in accordance with the township's purchasing and procurement bylaw. There were 5 registered plan takers and 3 submissions received. Submissions were scored by an internal selection committee, and the recommendation is to award to the highest scored proponent. Award to this vendor would require a budget top-up of approximately $160,375 and is recommended to be funded through the General Capital Reserve. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Evoy.
To you, sir. I'm just curious. I'm just reading some of the bottom here, Adam, the review of the current fleet, and that there's an indication that there is currently no reserve capacity and that there is, I believe I read that there should be. Can you just address that for us?
Yeah, kindly, with your permission, Mayor Waters, I defer to Fire Chief Mulvey. I think a lot of that is stemming from the fire master plan, but he's probably more apt to talk to that.
Yes, and thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters. Basically, there's a fire underwriters or the insurance people do surveys on municipal fire departments. When they do that survey, they look at a number of things. First of all, do you have a full-time chief? Do you have any full-time staff by having suppression staff 24 hours a day? And then they look at your fleet. And what you need to have is an NFPA compliant pumper. And to be NFPA compliant, it has to pump so much water, hold so much hose, carry so much equipment, and that sort of thing. And it has to be 20 years of age or less. The reserve capacity is that we do not have anything to back that up right now, but a 20-year or older can be a reserve pumper. And that was suggested in the 2017 master plan that we move the current pump that's at its end of 20-year life back as a reserve.
Thank you, sir. So to clarify, we are not in a situation of concern.
We are this time not in a situation of concern, but if that truck, as it gets older, it costs a tremendous amount of money to keep maintained, and we have nothing to put in its place if it does go out of order.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from council? Councillor McDonald.
To you, Mayor Waters, to our fire chief, or Adam, I'm not sure. Is this the same pumper truck that we ordered? Was it last year? And it's just an update, or is this another pumper truck? Can you clarify?
It's the same truck. The procurement of this truck has been difficult in the fact that the prices are changing in the supply and demand and that sort of thing. So this is just moving forward with what we proposed last year.
Okay, so it's the same procurement of a truck and it's just an update in the financial.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Any other comments, questions from council? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we have a recommendation that the Township of Centre Wellington award a request for proposal 3023 regarding the purchase of one new purpose-built fire pumper truck with enclosed side pump panel to Dependable Emergency Vehicles at an upset limit of $1,993,377, excluding HST. Change that to 59. Oh, sorry, 5923, right? Yep, sorry. Yes. Okay, do I have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, a seconder on that? Councillor Jefferson, any further comments or questions on that? Oh, yes, go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Thank you, and through you, and sorry if you do need to get back up, apologies. With the current pumper being moved to reserve, is there the option, if we're getting a brand new pumper, to sell that to offset some of this cost and not have a reserve because we have a brand new pumper?
And through you, Mayor Waters, thank you for the question. That could be an option. However, then you would not have the backup, and it would be something that this was voted in 2017 to have the pumper go back as a reserve. It is an option. What we find, though, is because it's at end of life for us, it would be end of life for anybody else. It wouldn't be sold as probably as a fire apparatus. It might be sold to somebody else needing pressurized water, and you would not receive very much money. I believe the last time we sold pumpers was a few years ago, but they went for like $5,000.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? So moved. Okay, we're going to move down to item 8.3, Community Improvement Plan 2024. Report by, welcome, Sally.
Hello, everyone. I'll make the same comment. It's weird to not have a button. I'm here today with the implementation report for the CIP, the Community Improvement Plan that you guys have seen a couple times now and already approved. Part of the implementation and administration of a CIP is that council determines which incentive programs, if any, are active in a given year. So this report, staff and the Economic Prosperity and Growth Advisory Committee are recommending 6 of the 7 incentive programs to be active in 2024, which is all of the programs within the CIP with the exception of the facade and property improvement grant. Reasoning behind that is that the facade improvement piece has been a priority since the first CIP came into play in 2015. And so this is a little bit of a strategic reallocation of resources to fund some newly identified priorities. And then all 7 programs will be looked at again for which ones to activate for 2025. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from council? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Adams.
Just a quick comment. Great work on this. I think it's going to be very welcomed in the community, and so great to see, like you said, the focus on these new incentive priorities. So great job.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a thank you. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington adopt the Community Improvement Implementation Report as recommended by the Economic Prosperity and Growth Advisory Committee, and that the council authorize the use of the study grant, building improvement grant, rental housing grant, rental housing development charge deferral, tax increment equivalent, and brownfield tax assistance incentive programs, that's a mouthful, for 2024 as recommended by the Economic Prosperity and Growth Advisory Committee, and that the council delegate the approval for the above incentive programs to the Managing Director of Planning and Development or designated in consultation with the Community Improvement Implementation Committee, and that council delegate the signing authority for the financial agreements for the above listed incentive programs to the Managing Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer. Okay, do we have a mover for that? Yes, Councillor Evoy, a seconder on that. Councillor Craddock, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Okay, we're going to move down to item 8.4, Heritage Permit Application 2743 West Mill Street, Elora, and we have Mariana here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Waters, members of council. The report before you is for a heritage permit application that was made for 27 to 43 West Mill Street in Elora, and that's the site of what you would know as the Gorge Cinema. and the building in front of it as well as being redeveloped, and recently went through a heritage permit application and approval about a year ago for restoration of that building, well, rehabilitation actually, to convert it into a mixed use building again with commercial at grade and 4 residential units above. So this is a corollary to that in that they are now proposing reinstatement of what was originally a balcony on that building on the front facade at West Mill Street. So the application is to reinstate a balcony on the front facade, and it has been through review with the Heritage Committee. A heritage impact assessment was actually provided, a scoped assessment to, in addition to what was previously reviewed, to review now the addition of this balcony. So that assessment was included as part of the report as well and was reviewed by the Heritage Committee. And that went to the committee in January. The committee recommended approval, and therefore staff is also recommending approval with some conditions. And that would be the 3 conditions as outlined in the report. They're basically to ensure that the work is carried out in accordance with approved standards and guidelines, and with the plans that were submitted and prepared by Tacoma Engineering, and that the documentation be provided to the township periodically and after the construction is complete. So as such, staff recommends approval of the heritage permit application, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. Comments, questions? Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Mariana. I have a couple of questions about this, with your permission. One, there was some discussion a while back around what implementing those balcony legs would mean with regards to bell lines and other things like that. So my first question is, can you speak to this removable leg that we're talking about and how it does or doesn't affect the basic infrastructure below?
Yes, thank you. Through you, I will defer to Colin to speak to that, because there is, I should have added that there is also an encroachment agreement that's been applied for and has been processed. And I know the next item on the agenda is a report on that. So perhaps I can let Colin speak to that. But just to add to that, it was considered through the heritage permit process as well, in that it will still look and similar to what it used to look like, but there are some practical implications to that, as you just mentioned, and maybe I'll defer to Colin now.
There we go. Okay, thanks for the question, Councillor Evoy, and through the mayor. The proponent has proposed a cantilever balcony. So essentially the balcony will be tied into the structure on the second level, the floor of the second level. So the 5 support columns will be non-structural. They'll just be decorative essentially. And the idea being that there's no footings required. These will simply be kind of bolted in place into the concrete sidewalk. And if for maintenance reasons, if one of the utilities, we have hydro, telecommunications, we have water and sewer beneath the sidewalk as well. There's a lot going on. If we ever needed access to those, to that infrastructure, the non-structural columns could simply be removed temporarily, and access could be provided, the maintenance could occur, and then those columns could be replaced as required. So a good solution to address that issue.
Through the mayor, my follow-up question is a little bit more in depth. So yes, I would want to talk about what that means to our snow cleaners and things like that. But as I'm often the one to ask about insurance and the well-being of our people walking along that street in the event of some sort of an accident because of one of those pillars, who's responsible? What does that look like? It's just such an, I'm very excited about the look. I just need to know that we are being safe.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question, and through Mayor Waters. So that's all worked into the encroachment agreement. There's provisions, conditions in the agreement to provide the township with a certificate of insurance with I think it's a $5 million general liability coverage, and also indemnify the township as well. So if there is a slip, trip, or fall related to winter maintenance, kind of maybe snow or ice building up around those columns, that the owner has fully identified the township, so that claim would just be forwarded along.
Councillor McDonald.
There you Mayor Waters. Will this balcony provide some shade? Core, I walk it daily, and if there is any shade, that would be great.
By virtue of the fact that it will be covering part of the sidewalk, it would provide some shade, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I also have a question about the balcony. I'm assuming, obviously, the permit would require all AODA meetings. I think you're supposed to be able to have 2 mobility devices be able to like go down through each other. I tried to look at the one, but I don't know if the one, like, I can't tell the difference. So maybe if you just speak to that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question through the mayor. So yeah, we're looking at a clear opening of 2 point. Hold on a second. Let me just verify. Yeah, so it's 2 meters from the facade of the building to the inside face of the vertical column, and then 3.25 overhead clearance. So our typical it's in our sidewalk bylaw. Actually, the minimum opening clear zone is 1.8 meters in the downtowns. Sometimes around the intersections we go down to about 1.5, but that's 1.5 is like our absolute minimum for sidewalks. So we're the 2 meters meets our minimum requirements, and then overhead wise, the 3.25, our sidewalk equipment, which is designed to do the 1.5 meter wide sidewalks, can easily fit through there as well. So we don't have to do any sort of strange off the sidewalk, back on the sidewalk in the wintertime through there. So I think from an AODA perspective, we're covered.
Any other comments, questions from council? Yes, Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Okay, so this came to us in 2023, I believe January 30th was the council meeting. And in there, it was expressed that this was like a wish with the intent to just restore what was there and not to include the balcony due to the infrastructure that's underneath the sidewalk, the encroachment on the right of way and that. So I'm just kind of wondering what changed and why this is coming forward now. My concern is the precedents, like the precedent setting of going encroaching over township property, which usually I don't believe has been allowed before. So that's my concern, and where this would open us up to other options or opportunities. And coming from the heritage aspect of restoring and replacing something that was there. There are multiple buildings that are around town that had balconies or front porches that are no longer allowed to require or no longer allowed to have them. So I'm just wondering what that kind of the encroachment and the heritage aspect of rebuilding something that was there, what that opens us up to.
It's like central to the downtown. It is a gateway feature, we could call it, and it was highly desirable to have this balcony reinstated on the building. So it was something that was pursued again, and basically what we did is reviewed it again to see if it was feasible. I'm not sure that there would really be that many applications that would be coming forward to be doing something similar. It's a substantial project, highly expensive just in terms of the infrastructure that's required to put this back on the building. They have to do a lot of structural upgrades to the building. I don't think it's something that would be necessarily a precedent that would be happening or would be common, but it's something that I think what we would do is consider it as on a case by case basis as it comes forward based on, the infrastructure that's there and what is feasible versus the desirability of having something reinstated from a heritage standpoint. I'm not sure if Colin has anything to add there.
Thanks for the question. So to answer the part about what changed from January, really the proposed design changed. So when the proponent initially approached the township, they were structural columns and they had large footings, beneath the sidewalks that were in with that telecommunications, water, sewer infrastructure that's directly beneath the sidewalk. So when the owner, proposed looking at the cantilever as an option and not disturbing really the sidewalk at all, that caused us to take another look at it and see, okay, now we're looking at something that's technically feasible, and then also, the fact that the precedent, that it did have the balcony for a number of years. We don't feel like we're setting a precedent that would open up to all businesses. This is restoring a pre-existing condition.
Okay, so then maybe not with restoring older buildings, but what about newer buildings? We have new developments that are being proposed and that we are deciding on that abut sidewalks for township, for overhangs. Can that now be something that would be allowable, that we can have an encroachment with balconies overhanging onto the sidewalks from new builds that are going into the downtown cores or even into your residential areas?
Yeah, through Mayor Waters. So I think, we would default to our current policy, which is that's not permitted. So when new development applications are submitted, we typically, like 99% of the time, do not permit an encroachment into the road allowance. Encroachments, and I kind of go through this in my report in a bit of detail, is typically to address existing conditions. So that could be a porch, could be part of a building that's already located within the road allowance. Typically in the older parts of town where the road allowance was set, and there may be part of a building or steps, a porch, a sunroom, something that is in the road allowance. So we would, I think, default back to our typical position. I think that's why, from staff's perspective, we wanted to bring this forward to council for some discussion, because from staff's perspective, this is kind of a one-off, and it goes against our current policy in terms of not permitting this sort of thing.
Thank you, sir. Through you. Thank you for indulging me a second time. Actually, my colleague brought something to mind. A lot of people in downtown Fergus have been concerned about the inability to put a bench on said sidewalks because it encroached on the space, and it was only problematic during winter and snow clearing time. And I'm trying really hard, because I love the idea of this balcony, but to make it okay for those couple of people that want to put a bench out that are leaving essentially the same amount of space. So I wonder if we, and I don't know how big of an ask it is, but if we made sure that during winter the legs were up, it would just seem to be a little bit more fair.
Yeah, no, thanks for the comments, Councillor Evoy, and through the mayor. So, so we do have a sidewalk bylaw that kind of outlines, the conditions in which we want to see the sidewalk going into winter. we do have, again, the requirement for the clear space, the clear zone that we like to maintain, and also a minimum distance for our sidewalk machine as well. The concern with having a lot of street furniture along the building faces throughout the winter is the ability for that sidewalk machine to get through kind of the street trees, the street lights, and the street furniture. It starts to get very narrow. Also, with that one too, there's the buildup of snow, the freeze thaw events generating ice on the sidewalk. So those ones are a little problematic, and are not permitted in our sidewalk bylaw. So we're continuing to work with the businesses in the downtown about those benches that are, I believe the one's been removed, actually. I think there's only one bench left.
Right. So through you, sir. So respectfully, is this something, if these legs are going to cause a problem, the same problem in the winter that we were discussing that's happening downtown Fergus, is there a way to make sure that that we can remove them for winter if we're finding that around all 4 or 5 of those posts? Are we prepared to say, as long as snow and ice doesn't build up there, in which case we will ask you to pull them up in the winter? I just want to make sure that we're looking at all options for being as fair as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Through the mayor. Yeah, definitely. So that's an option. I think if snow removal is becoming a challenge around there, the option of removing those kind of non-structural supports would be totally fine. Yeah, that would be an option.
Councillor McDonald and then Councillor Adams. I'll move over to Council.
Mayor.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Waters, probably Mariana. This has to do with air. You're okay? Okay. With the heritage tied to this now, and there being an application, being the Elora downtown councillor, I've heard nothing but positive things about the commercial building and restoring it to its old glory, which it did have a balcony, and it did, which kind of looked like it had legs. So being that it's tied to heritage, is that what makes this a little bit different and unique in the ask? Can you elaborate on that just a little bit? Thank you.
Thank you. Through Mayor Waters, that's exactly it. This is a designated protected heritage property. It gives it it definitely has value to the community. And so it gives us a little bit more willingness, I guess, to work with a property owner who's willing to reinstate something that was there. That, again, most people probably wouldn't be doing, but given that it is a desirable outcome of this, and it's a protected heritage property, so we do look more favorably on those types of assets that people are willing to restore, and that is the difference here. Is it's actually.
Councillor Adams.
For you, Mayor. I may have missed this in the report, so forgive me, but I'm just curious, that second level with the balcony, I'm just curious what that is zoned, that area for. Is it all retail at that level, or is there is it apartments or Airbnb? Curious what that is. And then I just also wanted a further clarification. I know you had said that winter maintenance could be looked at, but would it, as it's being proposed, currently meet compliance with the sidewalk bylaw? I'm just also curious on that.
So thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters, I'll take the first question. Is the second story is residential. So there would be 2 residential units, and they are what used to be doors and were being removed and replaced as windows, are now going to be reinstated again as doors. So it's second floor is residential, and so is the third floor above. So there's 4 residential units, 2 on each. The lower level is the commercial, 2 ground level commercial units.
Yeah, through Mayor Waters. So yeah, just regarding the maintenance. So we would comply with the minimum maintenance standards. And again, that 2-meter clear path would be the part subject to the minimum maintenance standards. So we would maintain that just like we do the rest of our sidewalks. We just have a couple safety nets kind of worked into the encroachment agreement if something were to happen. We've got that certificate of insurance and then also the indemnification clause as well.
Any other comments, questions from council? I'd just like to make a comment. I think this is it's a special situation in terms of the opportunity here. Anyone who's looked at historian Steve Thorning's visioning of what Elora was in particular would see that iconic building, the commercial, back in its day with the porch and its all its glory. And if you had an opportunity to look at the revised drawings, it's pretty amazing to be able to have that. In some ways, it's a counter to, and this is not a criticism of that, but if you walk along Mill Street, you see the new condos in the background, and they do take a very prominent feature in the horizon. I think the introduction of the porch will sort of bring your eyes and your focus back to the ground. And that street is just like in Fergus, that street, the Mill Street, is very important, and it really sets a tone. And I think people will be very pleased when they see that reinstatement of that porch, because it was iconic for the downtown. Do I see a proliferation of these? No, because there's not very many. It's really the only building that have the opportunity to do this and have the history of that as well. And I would agree with staff in terms of the suggestion that there'll be all these coming forward. No, this is it's a very special case, and it really speaks to our respect of the heritage of our communities, and sort of and just the importance of this, and the ability to have this reinstated within our community. I think once we see it, I think we'll be all very proud of it. So, any other comments or questions from staff, or rather from council? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Central Wellington approves Heritage Permit Application HP 2024-01 for the alteration to the design property municipally known as 2743 West Mill Street, Elora, pursuant to Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, with the conditions outlined in staff report PLN and 2024-05. Do I have a mover for that?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Seconder on that, Councillor Craddock. Any other further comments or questions from council? All those in favor? So that's so moved. Thank you very much for that. We're going to move down to item. Okay, we're going to move down to item 8.5, encroachment agreement between the Township of Centre Wellington and Cat Florence Canada Company Limited for proposed balcony over the municipal sidewalk at 43 Mill Street in Elora, and we have a report from. I know, Colin, you've been sort of but we'll have you come forward again to speak to anything you may have missed. For
sure. No, thanks, Mayor Waters, and yeah, I think I think we've covered most of the points that I had in my intro. I would just add a couple of things. So my report has option A and option B. So option A is to approve the balcony with conditions. Option A is to approve the balcony with conditions. Option B is to refuse a permit for the balcony encroachment. And just there's a couple other conditions I just wanted to highlight for council that for option A, for the encroachment agreement, we've added provision for the owner to provide sidewalk lighting with the roof. We don't want that to be a dark area on the sidewalk. We want to make sure that we've got adequate lighting in accordance with township standards for lighting up sidewalks. Also, we've included a condition on inspections. So inspection of the balcony once every 5 years at a minimum cycle, that any recommendations, so the township would receive a copy of that inspection report, and that any recommendations by the qualified professional inspecting the balcony would be addressed within 12 months. So a bit of a safety net there just to make sure the balcony is properly maintained and looked after. And so the encroachment application is attachment 1 to my report. Attachment 2 provides the draft encroachment agreement, and be happy to answer any further questions at this time.
Thank you, Colin. Any comments or questions from council for Colin? Okay. Okay. So we have 2 options here. I'm assuming that we're all, not, I shouldn't say all, but the majority here is for option A. Just given the sort of the way this has fallen out. So do I have a mover on that for option A? Councillor Craddock, do I have a seconder for option A? Councillor McDonald? Any further comments or questions as it pertains to the option A? All those in favor? Yep. Oh, sorry, I didn't sorry.
No, not at all. Thank you. Is there a way that we can put in there that we are going to keep an eye on this in the winter and actually have it somewhere in our decision? I realize that might mean a redraft, but I love the idea of the balcony. I just want to make sure that winter doesn't create a problem as it does.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think the way the encroachment agreement is worded currently, like we have full discretion and control over how things are maintained in that area. So if there's anything that the township would require or would need in terms of something extra from the owner, I think we have the ability to require it. So so yeah, it's pretty broad powers, I guess, for the municipality in this case. Yeah.
Okay, we had a mover, we had a seconder, and then we had all of those in favor and those who are opposed. Thank you, Councillor Jefferson. Okay, so.
Did that carry? I'm
sorry. Yes, it did carry. Right. Sorry. Okay. Yep. Okay. Decision report RZ01322 223 St. Andrews Street East, Fergus, and we have Mariana back again.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters. The report before you is a zoning amendment application for 223 St. Andrews Street East in Fergus. The property is located on the north side of St. Andrews Street East, just east of Gowrie Street North, in the downtown core of the Fergus Urban Center. It currently contains 2 buildings that will be removed to facilitate the redevelopment of this parcel, which is approximately 981 square meters in size, or 1/4 of an acre. It is currently surrounded by a mix of uses, including commercial and residential. The zoning amendment seeks to allow an increased height to 16.7 meters to facilitate the construction of a 5-story mixed-use building with approximately 163 square meters or 1,800 square feet of commercial space at the ground floor in 2 separate units that would front onto Gowrie Street, and 17 residential units above with an elevator. So it would be fully accessible, with several units built to be fully accessible internally as well. The property is not listed or designated on the Municipal Heritage Register. Therefore, there are also no designated properties adjacent. However, there are several listed properties adjacent to this property, and it is also located within the identified Fergus Historic Village Core Cultural Heritage Landscape. The property is zoned C1 in Central Business District Commercial and is within the Central Business District designation of the official plan. Several studies were submitted in support of the application, and those included a planning justification report, servicing studies, a tree inventory and arborist report, shadow studies, a heritage impact assessment, and an urban design brief. So the applicable provincial and official plan policies are reviewed and addressed in the planning justification report, and the also echoed in the staff report. that's before you. Several of the technical studies draw conclusions and also provide recommendations in the case of further planning approvals. And these basically support the application. There was nothing raised that is of significant concern that would warrant a refusal of the application. A public meeting was held on April 26th last year. There were numerous delegations and at the meeting, and there were approximately 50 written submissions. So there was a great amount of interest in this application. The letters and the minutes of the public meeting are attached to the report. And I would say that there was a slight majority of comments were in favor of the development. Almost all recognized the need for additional housing in the downtown. And those who did raise concerns identified concerns with mostly impacts of a taller building on adjacent properties and the historic Main Street setting in the downtown, the architecture of the building, impacts on adjacent heritage resources, parking, traffic, and servicing. Many of those issues are addressed in the studies that were submitted and will be reviewed more during the detailed design stage, if approved. I think basically Pierre did a good explanation of the changes to the design that were made in response to the comments that were received. And I'll just summarize by saying the building was slightly moved to the west to get it away from that easterly property line to provide a little more room there. So it's getting closer to the corner. In addition, the upper floor, so the 5th story, is being stepped back, and that would attempt to reduce the impacts of height and massing on the streetscape, and also to minimize some of the shadowing on the adjacent property to the east. The lower story will now have a residential unit closer to the property to the east, which is still serves as a residential use. And that's just to provide a better transition, so there isn't commercial space in that area. And the applicant attended 2 Heritage Center Wellington meetings. The first with the original design and predominantly was to receive comments on the HIA. So the Heritage Committee reviewed the HIA. As well, the revised plans were provided to the Heritage Committee at their meeting, I believe in December. And the Heritage Committee's comments are attached to the report as well. And I will summarize by saying that the Heritage Committee does not endorse the HIA, given some concerns about the overall context, particularly with regard to the lack of policy framework protecting the CHL and how to deal with new builds in existing areas. However, the committee, there was general consensus that the revised design was much more favorable to compatibility within the downtown core and within this area. In addition, I guess their comments were mostly with respect to concerns about the easterly side and the streetscape along St. Andrew and future protection of that and compatibility with that. The analysis, though, by staff and the heritage consultants and the peer review heritage consultants were that the proposed height in and of itself does not have a significant negative impact on the streetscape or the cultural heritage value of the landscape that was identified and the adjacent buildings or properties. In addition, the shadow study indicated that the adjacent property would not be in excessive shadow as a result of the building. So furthermore, what I want to add is just that through the design review and the review with the heritage consultants, because there was a lot of concern raised, and staff also had some concerns about compatibility. We did determine that generally accepted urban design guidelines state that a building, if it falls within the 45-degree angular plane, it is considered to be at a pedestrian scale that is welcoming and not obtrusive to the streetscape. And in this case, it does fall within the 45-degree angular plane, even without the step backs, but the step backs were included to ensure a little bit more compatibility and less impact from the street. And then also, I will add that another typical urban design principle is that a building, in order to have a pedestrian sense of scale and fit in, would be is that a building shouldn't be taller than the width of the right-of-way. And in this case, the right-of-way, the road allowance is 20 meters, and this building is only at 16.7. So again, just in terms of those principles, it's considered to be compatible. So all the issues that were raised have been reviewed by staff and the consultants through the studies to ensure that the application itself could be supported. Further detailed analysis and design will be done through a site plan application process. But it is felt that most of the issues have been or can be addressed that were raised. And staff generally agree with the assessment and conclusions reached in the planning justification report that provincial and all other planning policies are met for this application. There is currently, as you know, a provincial mandate on facilitating an increase in density and housing supply, particularly rental housing units where services and amenities are readily available and close by. Residential intensification of underutilized sites, such as this one, particularly in the downtowns, is encouraged by both the province and county policies and the township zone policies. So compact housing forms contribute to reducing urban sprawl, reducing costs of infrastructure, and keeping new housing costs lower as well. Moreover, accessible housing is needed for seniors and people of all ages and abilities who want to live in this community but are being forced, unfortunately, to move to other communities due to lack of supply of accessible units. I should note that only at this time is the height being considered. That is the design of the building and those types of matters, site plan matters, parking, circulation, entrances would be dealt with at a later time through site plan approval. But right now the height is being considered, and as well as the site-specific additional setbacks for the upper story. I will note again that a 4-story building is permitted as of right on this site. So if this was developed as a residential building, it would be permitted to be 4 stories, and that would be 15 meters. So what is being requested here is an additional 1.6 meters of height to reach the 16.7 meters. And staff recommends, one other thing I will add is that this is a C1 zone, which is Central Business District Commercial. The properties as well to the east on St. Andrew Street are all within, they're not residentially zoned. They are all within the Central Business District and Zone C1. So any of those could be redeveloped as well at any time. Obviously, the ones that are heritage, identified as heritage, designated or listed would be considered through the heritage review as well, but they are all within the Central Business District, and the expectation is that the area would be redeveloped and intensified. So given all of that, staff does recommend approval of this application for an increase in height to 16.7 meters with the site-specific provisions as set out in the draft bylaw. Staff feels that the township, all of the provincial and township policies regarding the provision of housing in a central business district are met, and the area is intended to accommodate the most intensive development within the urban centers, contributing to walkable, healthy, and complete communities where there are amenities such as parks and other services, easily accessible, encouraging also less reliance on the automobile. This can be accomplished by still meeting the policy framework to protect heritage resources, since the existing heritage resources are all still being protected, and any potential impacts can be mitigated through conditions at the site plan stage and through careful design. So those are my comments. Sorry for the lengthy presentation there, but I just wanted to walk you through the review process, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mariana. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Evoy.
Through you, sir. Thank you so much. I want to start by saying we're a growing community, and I'm celebrating all of that. I'm 100% behind and in support of infill and intensification. I'm equally committed to ensuring that we don't push our developments into our precious farmland. I'll also add that I'm super excited to see and to support a variety of new housing options, most especially rentals and barrier-free spaces. With that said, I look at each situation on its own merits. And in this case, I'm concerned that the weight of several projects happening in such close proximity with regards to both timing and location are going to result in an overload, will seem overbearing to our neighbors and our infrastructure as well. So on that note, I will be voting no to this motion.
Any other comments, questions from council? Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. My question would be just a clarification in your commentary, I guess. When you were saying that it's in the commercial district and that it's being a commercial residential, and then it would normally be allowed to be a 4-story that was built in there. Would it be a 4-story commercial residential option, or would it be just a 4-story residential in there? And my question is relating to the parking, because I know we are allowing, because of the commercial designation, a 50% decrease in required parking. What would it be if it was a residential 4-story? Would the required parking number approximately be?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you for the question. 4 stories would be permitted as of right, based on a provision in our bylaw that allows any property in Fergus to be redeveloped, not in the central business district, with a residential building, fully residential, outside of the main street. So if you're not on St. Andrew Street between Tower and St. David, you can fully utilize the residential zoning provisions, and those would be the R4 zone. So R4 is an apartment building zone, and that would be 4 stories, fully residential. If it was, basically the way the bylaw reads right now is a mixed-use building is permitted with ground level commercial, with up to 3 stories if it's mixed use. If it's fully residential, it could be 4 stories.
And then would the parking requirement then be double?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that part of it. The parking provisions would apply to the R4 zone. So they would be differently calculated, so 1 per unit, and then there would be visitor parking requirements on top of that. With the, thanks, Brett. In the downtown core, though, there's still a 50% reduction regardless. In the C1 zone.
Okay, so even if it's residential 4-story, 50%.
That's right.
Okay, because that's where I'm really struggling, is the number of potential cars that could be and the customer parking that would be expected with the commercial main floor level. And if you're only looking at 13 spots to share amongst 17 plus 2 commercial units. So just the volume of cars. And then with our parking strategy maps, with the report that came out for information the other month, the map is saying, like, and it was done on a Wednesday in September, we're operating at 100% capacity on St. Andrew Street East, and on Gowrie, I think was in yellow or might have been in red, and then in green on St. Patrick Street. It's just, we live in a community still that car is king, and we're very commuter driven. And that's where I'm really struggling, is the number of cars, and that we do have private lots there that have cars parking in them without permission overnight, because now you can't park on the street. And just with the volume of people that are there, which I totally understand with the housing, and I totally understand that we need housing in Center Wellington and we need rentals. It's just the car issue, which is a huge thing. Like, it's such a big issue in Fergus and Elora that we have a parking strategy being done for this. So that's just where I'm sitting, that I just have issues with that. I think a 4-story with a smaller requirement of parking would be allowable, but it's just the impact where we have to look on the impact of the neighbors and the neighboring businesses and everything as well. We can't look at it as a one of, that we can tuck something in there and just expect everybody to just live with it. That's where I'm sitting. Sorry.
Thank you for the comments through Mayor Waters. Just to add something to that, we heard the concerns about parking. The applicant is proposing to add 9 spaces just across the street behind the other properties that he owns on St. Patrick Street. So that's something that we would basically secure through the site plan process. Our zoning bylaw right now allows a property to, within 300 meters, if it owned by the same owner, that they could provide the parking that's required on site on an additional or adjacent site within 300 meters. So that would bring the parking count up to 22 spaces. The 13 to 14 provided on site plus the 9 additional that would be used for this site would be provided just across the street. There's just additional comments that I wanted to make there.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So my understanding is right now, this is really focused on the rezoning from 4 to 5, right? And can you just confirm, because it's always my understanding and what I heard in the public meeting and the comments from people with the need for accessible rentals, if a developer builds to 4 levels, they don't require, nobody's requiring them to put an elevator in there. Whereas as soon as we go to 5 levels, which thankfully this has been redesigned and set back, that actually requires a developer to put an elevator in there, which makes, I would assume, the unit available, more accessible to all.
Thank you, through you. I believe that after 4, you have to have an elevator at 4. If you have 4 stories, you need to have an elevator per building code requirements. At 4 stories, anything above 3, essentially.
My understanding is Brett have some comments on parking.
Sorry, just further to Councillor Jefferson's question in reference to the parking strategy. Part of the parking strategy did also review our zoning regulations for parking downtown and concluded that the 50% reduction was an appropriate measure in a zoning bylaw where there's a presumption that there's parking provided by the public. So the parking strategy is all about trying to secure more parking that's publicly available, and it's not recommending that we increase the amount of private space parking that's available. It advised that our 50% reduction in that parking ratio that we apply in the zoning bylaw was appropriate.
Do you have a further question? Or you're just looking? Yes. Do you want me to go somewhere else and come back? Okay. Any other comments, questions from, oh, hi, yes, we haven't forgotten you. Councillor McDonald.
You keep forgetting them. It's okay. Through you, Mayor Waters. Lots of really good comments. How many units are on the top level? And of course, I always support an elevator. I'm about AODA and accommodation in any rental property. And I'm looking for actually rentals for potential doctors as well in our community. How many units are on the top there, please?
Through Mayor Waters, I'm told it's 4 units on the top floor.
So really, my discussion in my mind is about 4 units. So, okay, thank you. I will be voting yes to this.
Councillor Jefferson, yes, I'm back to you.
Oh, hey, thanks. Okay, just to clarify with Brett. So the 50% reduction with our zoning, as long as it's provided for public parking, like as long as there is public parking, or as long as we will be supplying more public parking, or that there's public parking around there? And is there a requirement for the number of public parking spots that need, just because around that area, there's like private lots. So.
Right. My point was only that the consultant that did the parking strategy has made significant recommendations that we need more publicly available parking in the downtown core through a variety of measures that are recommended. The one like the paid parking and parking limits and things like that, right? But in terms of the on-site private parking, they did not make any recommendation that we alter the private requirement that reduces the parking on private property by half, and thought that that was an appropriate amount. And there's also a recommendation that we review the parking requirements for commercial and residential uses in our zoning bylaw overall, because most municipalities are reducing them and some are eliminating them altogether. So I was just trying to point out that there's a building proposed here. It meets the parking requirement at 50%, and the parking strategy doesn't critique that measure that's in our bylaw today. And as Mariana pointed out, in this site, the same property owner as other sites. I was only trying to emphasize that there's a duality to the parking recommendation. There may be a shortage in this specific area, but also we're not being encouraged to add to the private requirement.
Comments or follow-up?
Just a follow-up comment. And I can totally get behind like the reduction in parking requirements if we had active transportation, or if we had shuttles, or if we had like the whole connectivity of an active transportation. We do have trails, and we are trying to link, and I know we're the planning council now, so that we are doing a lot of future looking things so that we can be more of an active community. If we did have transit, and we weren't like a bedroom community for all the larger cities around us where everybody needs a car to get around. That's just where I'm really struggling, just because we can see the impact in downtown Fergus, but Elora has a bigger impact for their parking issues. So I know that Elora will be recognized first and dealt with first, so Fergus will be bumped down the road. And this will be something that's creating a bigger parking issue in the downtown core after it's built. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jefferson. Any other comments or questions from council? Comments or Councillor Adams, any further? Councillor Jefferson, any? No? Nope. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Where Fergie's Fine Foods is that commercial up that far? It must be. Can you clarify?
I believe so. It goes up to Cameron Street.
Okay, that's great. So that's all commercial as well. Okay, thank you.
And I was going around the horseshoe here again, and I didn't get to Councillor Evoy. No, yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, I would like to add a few additional comments. My understanding, and there's a question in here as well. So they're meeting their needs right now in terms of parking, and adding additional 8 or 9 on top of that takes us to 22. The amount of units in there right now are 17. And so they're meeting the needs that way. These things are always difficult because we're obviously dealing with a parking strategy right now, and we have development, and this is going to be like this for a while because all these things are coming to us all at once. The one thing that I can speak to is these routes are very important because St. Andrews and Highway 6 are spines, especially and these in terms of future transportation. And you've made it clear that transportation, we're all going to be looking into that as part of the active transportation and all that. And I'll turn to Dan in a minute to speak to that a little bit in terms of some comments there. But this is all sort of the part of the planning part of it. And these things don't all necessarily arrive at the same time, but we sort of need to deal with them at various times that way. As being the spine of our community, especially in Fergus, these areas are going to be really important in terms of when we have more full-time transportation, that's where the people are going to need to be along these spines that way. So location-wise, it's optimal in terms of these types of builds, and you're going to want people who not necessarily have cars or have the opportunity to have rental units along these routes. So that I think is really important, and we shouldn't forget that. The idea of having this size building in terms of there and having it fully accessible from an elevator, that's really important. Also, the fact that it's rental units and the variety of rental units, different types in there, I think is also important, because I hear that all the time. There's not enough rental units, or if there is, it's like single apartment, and it's usually in a basement somewhere, which is nothing is wrong with that. But there's a need for to have sort of these additional residential opportunities that way. I'm just going to turn to Dan here in terms of, and again, these things it's all coming fast and furious in some ways, but the idea of some active transportation as relates to, transportation in general.
Yes, through the mayor, we are doing a number of studies this year, as council is aware, that relate to active transportation, the parking strategy that was presented to Economic Prosperity and Growth recently, and then we'll come to council later this month. All of those take into account the growth projections, including developments like this in downtown Fergus. From a transit perspective, council has asked staff through the strategic plan to look at transit feasibility, and that's something that we'll be looking into as well. I would like to point out through the parking strategy that there are some transit recommendations, more minor in nature, coming out of that study that council will see very soon, as well. Just a point on the parking demand on St. Andrew Street. The strategy does indicate that walking a block away from St. Andrew Street opens up a lot of availability of parking currently, but we need to be mindful of growth and development in Fergus and plan accordingly by following the recommendations in the parking strategy.
Just in response to you, sir, I agree and reiterate that it's not about having a building there. I know this is necessary. It's about the timing of having 3 major projects happening almost simultaneously and the burden that will bring to our neighbors, especially our downtown and core area neighbors, having 2 buildings and the bike lanes done within the same time without having any strategy in place yet. So to ask me this question again in 6 months from now, once we have a strategy in place, I may very well answer differently. But at this time, it's about the burden that so much happening at the exact same time without a definite plan might bring.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm really concerned where, like, in a lot of our plans and priorities and that we've, provided to the public, that we've focused on increasing density and going against that now also gives me concerns. I think when we talk about burdens, there's a really large burden in our community where there's a lot of developers coming in and buying up property and sitting on it and not doing anything. I think that's a big burden to our community. I think a local developer who comes in, listens, comes back with a new design. It's hard to ignore all those people that came and filled this room in a public meeting and talked about the absolute need to increase rental properties in the community. I may not like everything about this, but I find it hard to go against a lot of what is happening here. So I, for one, will be voting for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any other comments or questions as relates to this? So this is kind of a watershed moment, folks. We talk in terms of the importance of intensification, growth within our community, and how we deal with it. These things are not easy decisions, and I understand sort of our, it's a real dilemma, and these conversations also carry within the community, not just ourselves that way. But I think it's an opportunity to state to the community the need to have variety of housing in our downtown, the importance of intensification, preservation of agricultural lands, and doing in a way that still has a sensitivity to our downtown. And Councillor Jefferson referred to the planning committee, and I honestly believe that. Like, we are setting those parameters that way, and it's really important. These are tough decisions. But I think, we have to think in terms of how do we, there's a lot of pressures on different aspects here, but how do we do this in a way that we're not going to, it's going to be difficult. So that way. And like I said, I appreciate your input that way. And if there's no further comments or questions, then what I'm going to do, just so because I'm anticipating a close vote here. So what I'm anticipating is probably we could vote or take a recorded vote if everyone's cool with that. Yeah. Okay.
We don't have a mover and a seconder yet, though.
Okay, so I'll push for a mover on this. Who would like to move this? Recommended Councillor Adams. Do we have a seconder on that? Councillor McDonald, thank you.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is, the question at hand is to whether we move forward on this or we don't, or you don't move forward. Correct. In terms of, do you want me to read the?
I think you should.
Okay, I'll read the recommendation. The Council of Township of Centre Wellington approves application RZ 01322 for a zoning amendment and gives 3 readings to the necessary bylaw. We have a mover and a seconder, and then I can ask for a recorded vote. Correct. Do you need to do that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Councillor Jefferson, yea or nay? Councillor Evoy?
Nay.
Councillor Craddock?
Abstain.
Councillor Adams? Yea or nay?
Yay.
And Mayor Waters?
Or did you get Councillor McDonald?
Yes, sorry. Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
And Mayor Waters?
Yay.
The motion fails. It's defeated. An abstention is a negative vote.
Apologies, sorry. Through you, Mayor Waters.
Yep, go ahead.
I felt in my heart of hearts I couldn't confidently vote either way. So I thought I was removing myself from the vote. But knowing that, is there a way to call for a revote just given that information? I apologize on my lack of knowledge.
Vote for reconsideration requires 2/3 majority, someone that brings it forward on the prevailing side. Yeah. I think we should take a recess if that's where we're going, just so we can
Apologies, sorry.
think it through and do it correctly.
So why don't we take, I don't know how we're going to carry you, Councillor McDonald, but we're going to take a recess here. Thank you.
How many minutes is the recess?
welcome back, everyone. Okay. Councillor Craddock, you had something you wanted to bring forward.
Yeah, just at this time, I'd like to bring forward a motion to reconsider.
Yes. I will defer to you. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I will just explain that Section 7.2B of the procedural bylaw indicates that a member who voted on the prevailing side of a decision may bring forward a motion to reconsider at the same meeting at which the question to be reconsidered was dealt with and shall require the support of the majority of the members. So therefore, you can now look for a seconder.
Who would like the seconder? Councillor McDonald.
Are you seconding the original motion? No, or the amendments?
This one that's on the floor right now.
Motion to reconsider.
Yeah, motion to reconsider. So we have a first and a seconder, and then we just call for a vote.
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor? Reconsider. That was a majority. Thank you for that. Okay. Now on the floor that the council to the Township of Centre Wellington approves application RZ 013-22 for a zoning amendment and gives 3 readings to the necessary bylaw. So do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Craddock. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Adams. Okay. Do we want to do a recorded vote again, or do we have any other comments or questions on that?
Just at this time, I'd like to apologize to everyone, to our developers, to the staff, to the public, to fellow councillors. My understanding was abstaining was essentially playing Switzerland and being neutral in all of this. I was a little undecided, but leaning towards a yay, and if knowing full on if that was going to be viewed negatively, I would not have abstained. So apologies to you all, and looking forward to this next vote and putting this to rest.
Thank you, Councillor Craddock, for those comments. Okay, so we're going to do a recorded vote again.
Okay. Councillor Jefferson, yay or nay? Councillor Evoy.
Nay. You guys have to use your mics or they can't be heard.
Go and start again.
Councillor Jefferson?
Nay.
Councillor Evoy?
Nay.
Councillor Craddock?
Yay.
Councillor Adams?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
And Mayor Waters?
Yay.
Okay, the motion does in fact carry.
Okay. Thank you for that. We're down to, sorry, apologize.
Sharon now.
Thank you. We're down to 8.7 electric vehicle charge on program. Kind of like that. So who will speak to the EV charge on program? Oh, hey, Dino. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Waters. And through you, just bringing this report to council, the grant, the Ontario Charge on Fund grant, became known to staff after the budget process. And we recently applied. Part of the application process was securing funding for 25% of the project. That 25% amounts to $21,500. And we're asking council today to support that application through the confirmation of that funding to install 4 EV chargers in Fergus and 4 EV chargers in Elora. To add to that, all the work will be done in-house with Public Works staff, and we have the support of Centre Wellington Hydro.
Thank you, Dino. Council, comments, questions? I see your hand. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you, Dino, for bringing it forward. I do have a bit of concern. So that's 4 for Fergus, 4 for Elora. We're using in staff. Yes, it's post-budget. There's a grant attached. I understand that. Future, who's going to do the maintenance on this? How is Center Wellington Hydro involved? Just for transparency, is this something that we will be taking over with the maintenance eventually? And I'm not sure if you can answer that or if the 2 people in the room that actually sit on the CW Hydro board maybe could answer that too. So thank you.
Does someone want to take a stab at that? And I can throw in my my bit in there as well. So we'll start with Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McDonald, for the question, and through Mayor Waters. So, the way it currently is arranged now, we have a brand of chargers called Flow, and so this vendor looks after. It's basically a turnkey system. So they look after kind of operation and maintenance of the chargers. We do get a portal that we can log into, look at the charging data. Kind of how much usage is being of each station is occurring, and so it's very much a low maintenance system for the most part. If there's any kind of technical difficulties, this company is fully capable of doing any repairs that are necessary. In terms of administering the program, Center Wellington Hydro has been great. They look after that contract with Flow. Talking to Wayne Dice at Center Wellington Hydro, they are interested in handing that responsibility over to the township at some point in the future. So that's something that we would certainly be open to. Again, I think it's fairly straightforward to under this contract to look after those stations, and something that we could incorporate into our kind of fees and charges bylaw. It's basically the system's run at a kind of a break-even cost. So I believe we're charging $1.75 per kilowatt hour. So pretty nominal rate as it stands today for the use of those stations. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes. Follow up.
Yeah, follow up. Is it possible to have, I don't want to throw you off guard here, maybe an update with Center Wellington Hydro's budget before June? I know we usually have it like once a year sort of thing, but maybe when we're dealing with things like this, just throw a little bit of the budget in there so we know future what we'll be taking over and how that will affect. And if it turns out to be lucrative, great. If it doesn't, okay, we know.
Through Mayor Waters, yeah, we'll have more conversations with Center Wellington Hydro on this. If we end up taking it over, we would have to do a full analysis of the cost to operate and maintain and the associated revenues with these chargers and put them into our budget. But we'll do that well in advance of the required budget process.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's great.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. I'm curious about the actual whereabouts that's going to be. So there are, like, I know we're talking about parking, taking away to add a new kind of car, which is very exciting. I'm just wondering, A, where they're going to go, and B, will we be policing those to make sure people aren't using them? I don't know what the fines are when it comes to things like using a special needs space. There's a pretty hefty fine, and people are very encouraged not to park there. Can we speak a little bit about this, if possible, please?
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor Evoy, for the question. Yeah, certainly they are. It's in the Highway Traffic Act as to, you know, if it has to be an electric vehicle parking in those spots. So OPP has the ability to enforce those provisions of the Highway Traffic Act. as we're looking to update our own no parking bylaw, that's something that that we could include in ours as well, so that our own municipal law enforcement officers could enforce that. So that's something that is on our radar as we look to update that in the future. That would be something that we would definitely be interested in including. The locations we are looking at a little bit further afield. So the parking strategy provides us with great data on parking space usage, and so kind of the approach for this this round of installations is a little bit further afield from the downtowns. So we're looking at the Fergus Curling Club parking lot, which is a public lot, kind of fairly well used, but at least a block and a bit away from the main street. In Allure, we're looking at Bissell Park and the parking lot in Bissell Park. So a little bit further afield, but from what we understand, generally we have some here. So that's kind of the model, the decentralized approach of kind of locating them in strategic places throughout the township, not all in one spot.
Council, any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a mover for I'll read the recommendation to the Council. Township of Central Wellington commit to 21,500 contribution in support of the grant application to the Ontario Electric Vehicle EV Charge On program. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Craddock. Any other further comments or questions? All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. We're going to go down to 8.8, update on township water supply projects. And who will speak? Oh, Adam, are you speaking to this? Yes. Welcome, Adam.
So I do have an update on our water supply projects, and I want to make this as brief as possible at the end of the day here. But yeah, so if council will recall, last year we presented a very similar report to you, and we wanted to provide you an update on some of these studies that have now been completed and talk about some of the next steps in this journey towards ensuring that we have enough water for future growth in the township. So there's a few key initiatives that I'll focus on here. The F2, F5 replacement program, the new well exploration program, the well field capacity assessment, and our permit to take water renewal. So this, we started this with our water supply master plan in 2019. So this study looked at, how much water we're going to need in the future to accommodate growth. And so the key question is, how much do we need? Where will that water come from? So some numbers here in terms of the requirements, but our current capacity, the capacity that was assumed during the water supply master plan was 12,400 cubic meters per day. And that's the firm capacity of the system, which is the total capacity minus the largest well out of service. It's kind of a conservative way of looking at the capacity of your system. The predicted 2041 peak demand was 19,400 cubic meters per day. So essentially we'd need an additional 7,000 cubic meters per day at 2041 to satisfy future growth. Typical municipal well will supply between 1,000 and 2,000 cubic meters per day. So the equivalent of approximately 4 new municipal wells were needed to meet future demand. And the strategy that was recommended through the water supply master plan was to first look at opportunities to optimize our current wells. And so it was recommended that we optimize current wells and add these new wells. So wells F2 and F5 were 2 existing wells that were identified for optimization. And then we had 4 new well areas that were recommended to be investigated. And they're referred to as areas 3, 5, 7, and 8. So the well F2 replacement project, so that's been completed. We have drilled a new well at the existing well F2 site. It's a much deeper well, so it's less connected to surface water, which is preferred from a water quality perspective and a water treatment perspective. We've confirmed the water quality is very good with no exceedances of health-based drinking water parameters. The current rated capacity of well F2 is 409 cubic meters per day, but testing of the replacement well indicates that capacity can be increased to about 1,700 cubic meters per day. And the next step at this site is to complete a municipal Class EA study. So anytime you increase the permitted capacity of a well, typically you need to do a Class EA study. So we have we're in the very early stages of that study, and we'll be officially kicking it off very soon. But that'll be the next step at that site. The well F5 replacement project. So well F5 has the permitted capacity, but we're not actually able to pump at that permitted capacity because of something we refer to as turbidity in the raw water. So turbidity is naturally occurring sand and silt particles that are in the water. And the higher we pump that well, the more the turbidity increases and causes us some challenges from a treatment perspective. So that well traditionally has only been pumped at about 20% of its permitted capacity. So we did drill a deeper well at that site to try and mitigate this turbidity issue with pumping. What we found is that the turbidity is persisting at that site, although it's trending in the right direction, and that we're starting to see a decrease. So we're still evaluating what treatment is going to be needed at that site over the kind of short and long term, and that work is ongoing this year. So now shifting to our new well exploration study. So this is to identify new municipal wells. And so we've just completed this study, and the findings were very encouraging. So 3 of the 4 well areas that we drilled look like they'll be viable future production well sites. And the estimated production, although it's preliminary, it's suggesting that we might actually get a bit more water from those wells than we typically get from a well site in this area. So in the order of 2,500 cubic meters per day, which is also good news. And we'll also have to complete a municipal Class EA study to look at the impacts of pumping from those locations and any mitigation measures that might be needed. That study will also be initiated this year. And the goal here is to bring one new well site online by the 2026 timeframe. Our wellfield capacity assessment. So in our current permit to take water, there was a clause in there that the township was required to complete a wellfield capacity assessment by December 31st of last year, of 2023. So we did complete that study by the deadline. And the purpose of that study is to look at what is the actual sustainable capacity of your entire system. So we went and we pumped all of these wells at the same time, and we monitored the aquifer to see what is the real capacity of this system. And based on that assessment, the maximum water supply capacity of the system is about 14,900 cubic meters per day, which is very close to our current maximum rated capacity of 15,031 cubic meters per day, although slightly lower. So that was a good finding also. Our rated capacity currently is very close to what our sustainable capacity is, and that will be feeding into an application for a renewed permit to take water, which we'll get to with the next slide, which is due. Our current permit to take water expires on June 30th of this year. So we have to apply for and receive our renewed permit to take water by that time. So we're working towards that goal. And the wellfield capacity assessment is the key document that accompanies that application. And we're hoping to submit that in the first quarter of this year to the ministry for their consideration. So what does this all mean? So we've done the wellfield capacity assessment. We understand what our maximum system capacity is. So that's 14,947 cubic meters per day. When we account for firm capacity, so that's that conservative assumption, which takes our largest wellfield out of the total, we have a firm capacity of 12,982 cubic meters per day. With the 3 new well areas, we're estimating we'll bring online another 7,500 cubic meters per day, which brings our total estimated firm supply in 2041 to over 20,000 cubic meters per day. Going back to the water supply master plan, we anticipated that we would need 19,400 cubic meters per day. So the 20,000 is greater than that number. So that's good news. That's showing that we're on the right path in terms of ensuring that we'll have that future water supply. I should a caveat to that there is a lot of work that still needs to happen. We have additional study in the municipal Class EA studies that we need to complete. There's regulatory permitting and new capital infrastructure needed to bring that additional capacity into our system. So we're still working towards completing those working towards those goals and completing those additional works. So just a note here, we have created a new webpage on ConnectCW that's called Water Supply Projects, and we have posted these technical reports to that website with some updates, and so that's available to the public as a resource. So our next steps, so the short term, kind of this year and next year, we're going to complete these municipal Class EA studies for the F2 replacement well and the new well areas 3 and 7. The new well area 5 is also a viable well, but we'll do the Class EA for that one later. It's kind of the last one in the list of wells that we think will develop. We will apply for and receive our updated permit to take water by June 30th of this year. We need to finalize our plan for treatment at well area 5. We have to update groundwater models and wellhead protection areas. So this is under our requirements for source water protection and the Clean Water Act. When we bring new wells online or we change the pumping to existing wells, we have to update those wellhead protection areas and they go into the source protection plans. So we have to do that work, which is largely a computer modeling exercise. And we need to design, permit, construct a new pumping facility and treatment facility at the well F2R site. Then longer term, beyond 2025, we'll be completing officially the source water protection amendments. We'll be eventually amending our permit to take water to include the new well areas when we bring those online. And we need to design, permit, construct a new water treatment pumping facility at Area 7, which we think will be the first new well area to come online, and connect it to the distribution system in the 2026 timeframe. And then Area 3 will follow later, and it'll be designed and constructed in kind of the 2030 to 2035 timeframe. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Did you want to speak to that now? Sure. Yeah, I can start with Dan here.
Thank you. And through Mayor Waters, I just want to also outline that council has given staff direction to prepare a water wastewater service allocation policy. So we are working on that now. That ties allocating water wastewater service capacity to future developments. We're working on that now, and we'll be bringing that forward in the short foreseeable future. So that's sort of tied to what's going on in the next couple of years as well.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Thank you, Adam. As always, really informative. I'm not entirely clear of the regulations, so my question's about that. How often are we allowed to reapply for that permit? And if we discover that we didn't ask for enough water, which I suppose can happen because, excuse the pun, there's not a lot of overflow. There's not a lot of space between what you anticipate and what you think we're going to need and what we're applying for. So I'm wondering those two questions: how often can we reapply, and if we make a mistake, is there space to do that sooner, if need be?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Evoy, and through the mayor. So the permits typically last 5 years. And then they expire. That said, you can apply for an amendment to the permit at any time. So if we were to discover that there's a change in plans, or maybe a change in the sequence in which we wanted to permit these wells, we could do that. You're welcome.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. The note on F2R where the capacity looks like it could go up almost like 4 times the current amount makes me a little nervous hearing that. And I'm just assuming, just clarifying my assumption, the municipal Class EA study will do a full analysis of impact to the surrounding area there and the residents, because it's in a tight residential area as well, I believe.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Adams. So through the mayor, absolutely. So that Class EA process is a public process where we consult with impacted stakeholders. So that'll be folks who live in that community and anyone who's still on a private well. in that area. So we will be having that engagement through the study and also looking at any impacts and how we would mitigate those with our pumping.
Any other comments or questions from council? Council McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you for a fulsome report. First, I'm going to give a compliment. I did hear from a resident, a very skilled resident, who found the report very well done. Very, very well done. So I appreciate that. It's nice to get a compliment from a resident. My question is on F5 and where we are at with the silt strategy and future of the F5 well, please.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McDonald, for the question through the mayor. So with F5, so we've kind of been observing what's happening at F5. So we've been, increasing the pumping gradually over time to see what the response is. And what we're finding is that the turbidity is not as high as it has been historically at the higher pumping rates. So we think that, when we drilled this new well, we kind of disturbed the system a little bit and we changed the way that it behaves. And it takes time in these aquifers sometimes for those changes to kind of level off. So we thought, let's see how it's going with pumping at these increased flow rates before we decide on a turbidity treatment option at that site. I think ultimately there will be something that will be required in the way of treatment, but we want to see kind of where it ultimately levels off. So we're observing currently, and then we will design a system accordingly.
Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, thank you, Adam. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington receive for information report number IS 2024-05, update on township water supply projects. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Jefferson, seconder on that. Councillor Adams, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So move. Thank you. We're going to move down to bylaws. Okay. 9.1, bylaw 2024-07, a bylaw to amend the Township of Centre Wellington zoning bylaw 2009-045 as amended to change the zoning of the subject land from C1 to C177.6 to 23 St. Andrew Street East, Fergus. A recommendation that the bylaw 2024-07 be read a first, second, and third time and passed and signed by the mayor, clerk, and the corporate seal affixed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, seconder on that. Councillor Craddock. All those in favor? So moved. Notice of motions, nothing. Nope. Motions where notice have been given, nothing. Confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to confirm the actions of council. Recommendation that the bylaw 2024-08 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held February 12th, 2023 be Sorry, 24. Yes, it is. It was, we were back in some kind of altered state there. The February 12th, 2024, be introduced a first, second, and third time and passed in open council. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Ebor, seconder on that. Councillor Adams, all those in favor? So moved. And then we have adjournment. Do you have a mover for adjournment? Councillor Craddock, seconder on that. Councillor Adams. All those in, sorry, I missed you. Yes, you're in there for the love of it too. Okay. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much. Thank you for the honest and good dialogue today, and have a good evening. Thank you.